think when you look at the two characters in this film, Rex and Roz, it shows us how different people respond to pain in their lives. So it seems like Rex, he wanted to avoid pain, to ignore it, to shove it down. Where Roz, she was going to fight the system and she wanted to rebel against it. So I would talk about, hey, what are some of the different ways we respond to pain and hurt in our lives? And why do we respond in this way? Another theme in this film, I think, is serendipities, and that is an unexpected surprise. So it's interesting how when you look at the film, Roz tricked Rex into going on this long road trip across Texas. But even though she lied to him, something good happened from it. So perhaps a good thing to talk about in your group would be, have you ever had something happen in your life that you thought was negative or you thought was something that was going to drag you down, but actually there was something good in it, something good came from it? So I think you can talk about that in your discussion. It's interesting as you look back in your past, a lot of people want to encourage us to blame things and people for our past. In other words, if you had a really bad family, a dysfunctional family, it's like you have a free pass to start blaming them. However, that's not really fair. I think one of the things I want to encourage the students to do is to evaluate their past, whether it was a good past, a bad past, a great family, or a tough family, and then figure out, how can I take responsibility for my own life? I think that's a theme this film brings up again and again. I think I would want to talk about the paradox, perhaps, how many times you have bad kids who came from a good family. You have good kids who came from a bad family. So the idea that if I just came from a perfect home, life will be better is not always true. So talk about what's the difference? How do you explain that contradiction, and what can they do about it in their own life as a student, as a person who's on a journey in this life? I think a lot of us, like Rex and Roz, are constantly dealing with father issues. And a good question or a good road to go down, if you would, for this discussion would be, what impact does that have on your life when you have a father who is distant, or a father who abandoned you, or a father who may have been abusive, or maybe even passive? Many psychologists postulate that sometimes we take the negative experiences we had from our earthly father and project them onto our heavenly Father. Ask the students, how do they feel about that? Does that ring true or not for them? There are so many intense scenes in this film where we go from here. One of them for me was when the van broke down on the way back, on the road trip back. So when the van broke down, so did Rex, or also known as Vanner. Talk about his breakdown, his meltdown, as it seemed like his facade of happiness and have it all together kind of melted. It was also in that scene that Roz had that Chinese vase broken. You know, her brother just smashed it on the ground. Talk about that vase. What do you think that vase represented to Roz? What did it represent perhaps to the writers of this film? What does it represent to you? Again, that's to me a key point of this film. If you look at the end of the film, they're taking the broken pieces of a vase and hurling them into the ocean. What do you think that's all about? Why is that the ending of this film? What does that symbolize? Again, going back to the whole issue of brokenness and things in our past and how we're trying to deal with it and how we're trying to fix it. I think another thing that gets us stuck in our past are words people speak into our lives, words that are shameful, words that are negative. Like when their father said, you guys weren't worth it. You just weren't worth it. That's why he didn't come back for them. And many times we have people speak words over us, words of condemnation and words of criticism, and they can stick with us. Talk about at the end of the film where Rex has the courage to realize, you know what? Dad was wrong about us. What did that mean to you? What do you think he was getting at when he made that profession. And then I talk about this. How do you deal with that in your own life? How do you deal with criticism, especially when it comes from someone who you thought you trusted or someone you even respected at one time? To me, the overriding theme in this film is how do we move forward in our lives when the past keeps just pulling us back and dragging us down? Perhaps you could get the students to start thinking about what are some ways we can constructively deal with the past rather than ignoring it and putting a smiley face on like Rex tried to do, or just bowing up against it and rebelling like Roz tried to do. Is there some happy medium? Are there healthy ways that we can deal with our past, with others, and perhaps even with God?